It's Friday, and it's time for another mailbag. But the one question everyone seems to be asking is Notre Dame going to take another quarterback in the transfer portal this offseason? That's coming up.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, and welcome to Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. Today is Friday, October 27th, so happy Friday, and thank you for getting your Friday started here by making this your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer covering college football for Fox Sports, and this episode of Locked On Irish is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We got another mailbag episode today. Thanks as always to everyone who sent in their questions, although I gotta admit, I didn't receive as many as normal this week, so it might be a little bit of a shorter episode. So if you got questions and you want to be featured on the next mailbag episode, please send them in. You can drop them below in the YouTube comments, or you can send them on Twitter at LockedOnIrish, or slide in the Instagram DMs at LockedOnIrishPod. Okay, let's get to our first question here. This one comes from at David_and330. Earlier this week, you and Luke talked about Notre Dame getting another quarterback in the portal. At what point does it start to hurt quarterback recruiting? Fair question by David here. I think there's been a lot of discussion lately around what Notre Dame is going to do about the quarterback position in the offseason, and Marcus Freeman was actually asked about it in his press conference on Thursday, and he made an interesting remark. He said that following the second bye week, him and the Notre Dame coaching staff were going to get together and make a decision about Notre Dame's plans regarding a portal quarterback. He did say that right now, all options are on the table, and I think that is definitely the right way to go about this. I think that Notre Dame should wait until the offseason to make a decision. So frankly, I was pretty surprised that Freeman said that publicly, that they're going to make a decision during the season, because I think he kind of puts himself into a corner a little bit, because once that date happens, I guarantee you there's going to be multiple people in the media asking, so what did you guys decide? And then Marcus Freeman is going to have to answer whether or not he believes in Angeli and Minchie and even CJ Carr, who will be a true freshman, if he thinks that those three are capable of leading the team next year, or if he's not, then he's going to say, we decided we're going to look in the portal, which is, you know, somewhat of an indictment on Angeli and Minchie specifically, because they are the guys in the room. And personally, I don't understand why he would decide to make that public during the season, because then I think it's going to take some of the attention away from the team. Now, there's also an opportunity for Marcus Freeman to just kind of go back on those comments and say, hey, we actually decided to wait until the offseason. We're going to have to take more time to evaluate the situation, and so on and so forth. So that could definitely happen, but I was surprised to hear Freeman say that in his press conference on Thursday. But as for the original question, at what point does it start to hurt quarterback recruiting? I think if Notre Dame continues to do this for the next 4 years, then yeah, it's going to start hurting quarterback recruiting. But this year with Sam Hartman, this is the second time in the past 3 years that Notre Dame has had a grad transfer quarterback, and so far it's worked out really well for Notre Dame. Jack Cohn went 11-1 in his only season as a starter for Notre Dame, and then he ended up losing the bowl game. But I don't really put that on Jack Cohn. And then Sam Hartman this season has been great for Notre Dame, and both of those quarterbacks were far better than their alternatives. So it's worked out well for Notre Dame, and they were still able to land CJ Carr, an almost 5-star recruit, a high 4-star, and then Deuce Knight in the class after Carr in 2025, who's another 4-star quarterback as well. So clearly, Notre Dame's recruits have not really been that concerned about whether or not they're going to take a grad transfer quarterback over them. And as it is for every position, Notre Dame is going to get a guy in the portal to make up for a recruiting miss. And I think we can all admit that quarterback recruiting at Notre Dame has been down in recent years, which is why they went into the portal. So going forward, now that we've seen a clear improvement in quarterback recruiting, I don't think we're going to see as many following the 2024 season. I think Notre Dame is going to stick with their guys. But eventually, yeah, you're going to have to roll with the guys you have, and that means you're probably going to have to lean on some quarterbacks who aren't very experienced. It's going to happen. Notre Dame made that decision in 2022. They could have gone out in the portal and taken a quarterback. They decided not to. They put all their eggs in the Tyler Buchner basket. And guess what? It didn't work out, and Notre Dame finished 8-4 in a very disappointing season where quarterback might have been the weakest link on the entire roster. That was Marcus Freeman's first season. That is what he remembers the most about that year. So he is never going to make that mistake twice, where he turns down a transfer quarterback because he believes in an inexperienced guy and it doesn't work out. So looking ahead to next season, they're going to have to make a choice. And that actually is a good segue to our next question. It comes from @JTaylor. Who should Notre Dame take in the portal if that's what they decide? So here's the issue. I don't think there's going to be that many good quarterbacks in this class. Now, I could be wrong. There's always a chance that a quarterback on a good team who's been proven to have some success at the college level, there's a chance that one of those guys who none of us are thinking about decides to go into the transfer portal. I don't know who that guy would be right now, so I've got some names written down here. So most of this is speculation. I don't know if these guys would be good candidates, if they'll even enter the transfer portal, but some names to keep an eye out for. Malik Murphy, he's the backup quarterback for Quinn Ewers at Texas. He's sort of in an interesting spot because he's a redshirt freshman, and he's in between Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. Everyone expects Quinn Ewers to leave for the NFL after the season, and then Arch Manning is presumed to be the starter going forward. But Malik Murphy is really talented. There's been a lot of talk about his performance in the spring game when he was throwing the ball all over the yard. He was a good recruit. He's clearly got a bunch of ability. I don't know if Texas sees him as the future, but he basically has a tryout starting this Saturday for the rest of the world to see because Quinn Ewers is out with an AC sprain in his shoulder, and Malik Murphy is going to be the starting quarterback over Arch Manning. So he's going to have a chance to prove himself at this level. And, hey, if he has a good game or a few games, then he could be an option for Notre Dame if that's the route they go. Tyler Van Dyke is the quarterback at Miami. He still has some eligibility left. I don't really think that highly of him, to be honest with you. He was really, really bad in 2022 and has improved in 2023, but I don't think he really has it. I think he keys on guys, and he's got some talent, but that is only going to take you so far, especially when you're playing good competition, because if he just focuses on one guy and he's just staring him down, then the defense is going to make a play. He just trusts his arm a little bit too much, and even though he's talented, I don't think he's been that great in college. Another guy to keep an eye out for, maybe Devin Brown, who's Kyle McCord's backup at Ohio State. He actually just suffered an injury in that Penn State game. So I don't know what his future is, if he wants to wait behind Kyle McCord any longer, if he wants to try the quarterback competition again. I do know that competition was really, really close, and I think Kyle McCord got the nod solely because he had one more year of experience over Brown at the college level. So I think Devin Brown could have a good college career, but it's not like Kyle McCord is some elite quarterback either. And then there's Michael Pratt, the quarterback at Tulane, who you might have heard about last season when Notre Dame made their intentions clear that they were going to get a grad transfer quarterback. Pratt was at the top of the board for a lot of people. I think Notre Dame was looking at him hard. He was probably the most talked about guy up until people realized that Sam Hartman was even an option. And that's one thing to consider here as we talk about this. Like, it's late October. None of us had any idea that Sam Hartman was going to be in the transfer portal, and that as soon as he was in the portal, Notre Dame was the clear favorite to land him. So a lot can change between now and early December when those guys actually have to make those decisions, and Notre Dame will have to act on those as well. So I think that they should take a grad transfer quarterback because odds are one of those guys, Angeli or Minchie, is probably going to leave. I'm not reporting anything here, but I just think that that's probably going to happen because, say, Steve Angeli gets the nod. Is Kenny Minchie going to look around and be like, am I ever going to beat this guy out? Maybe he decides to leave early. Again, this is hypothetical speculation here. Or if Kenny Minchie wins the job, then Steve Angeli is like, well, I don't want to be a backup to a guy who's younger than me because I'm never going to beat him out. Maybe he leaves. And then Notre Dame's in a situation where they just have Minchie and Carr. That's not ideal. That's a redshirt freshman and a true freshman in your quarterback room. So I think Notre Dame is going to ultimately take a grad transfer quarterback. The caliber of that player, I'm not really sure. We're going to have to wait and see. And I think if that is the case, I don't think we should just pencil in whoever they take in the portal to be the starter, because I think that there will be a legitimate competition, and that Freeman and the Notre Dame offensive staff will give every quarterback on the Notre Dame roster a chance to win that job, and not necessarily a chance like Tyler Buchner had when we all kind of knew Sam Hartman was going to be it. I think it would be a legitimate competition, which then, of course, makes it a little bit less of an attractive job for a transfer quarterback. But hey, man, this is college football, and this is how it's always been, honestly. Quarterbacks transfer. They've been transferring for a long time, well before the transfer portal was even a thing, and now they transfer even more frequently. So I think what Notre Dame has to do is just take the best option out there and then let the chips fall where they may and let the best man win out. I think that should be the play every single season, and things will sort of just work itself out that way. All right, coming up next, you've got questions about some of Notre Dame's top rivals, including what the hell is going on in Michigan? Now time for your Game Changer of the Week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. Much like Sam Hartman has done for the Notre Dame football program, Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. They're full of flavor and well-crafted, just like a full-strength beer. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Today's episode is also brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you could stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all of the fun you're going to have. If you plan on attending the Pitt game tomorrow and you are still in need of a ticket, Gametime is the perfect place for you. It's the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country for a reason, and you can get images of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You could buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set, and the tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Before we get back to the mailbag questions, please take a moment to like the video below and subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening to the podcast, please rate the show 5 stars, leave a review, preferably a nice one, and of course, subscribe. All right, this next question comes from @NDHuddle55. If scum, with capital U, capital M, so I'm going to assume he's referring to Michigan here. If Michigan does not self-impose the death penalty, does that make them more fraudulent than they already are? I'll hang up and listen. So, unless you've been living under a rock lately, I'm sure you've heard about the alleged sign-stealing scandal going on at Michigan. And I got to admit, when I first heard this story, when I first heard that Michigan was stealing some signs, I kind of rolled my eyes and was like, okay, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, this happens at all levels of college football, high school, college, NFL. If you're relaying signs in, people are going to try to steal them. And it is actually completely legal to do during the game. So initially I thought, okay, Michigan got caught stealing signs in the game. Who cares? Like, yeah, some people might frown on that, but I think everyone is doing it. Everyone's trying to create an edge, and so be it. But then more reports start coming out, and you start to realize, wait a second, the scope of this thing might be a lot larger than we anticipated. So then the news comes out about Connor Stalions, who I believe is listed as an analyst on the Michigan staff, and how he was a former Marine who had experience in this sort of thing, cracking codes and things like that, and that Michigan was using him as their designated code breaker. And I thought, okay, it's a little weird that one guy's job is only to do that. But then when it came out that Stalions was going across the country, going to all the different Big Ten opponents that Michigan was going to play, he was going to the games in person, and he was buying tickets on both sides of the 50 so that he could get a view from both sidelines. Like, oh, well, that's bad because that is clearly stated in the rule book that you cannot do. You are not allowed to attend another college game if you are a college coach on the staff. So if, for example, Tommy Rees ever decided he wanted to come to a Notre Dame game during the bye, that is strictly prohibited by NCAA rules. Obviously, that's not going to happen with Tommy Rees there. But you see my point. Stalions was clearly committing an offense, and he was going to these games, and he was trying to get their signals, and you can't be doing that. How are they going to get out of this? But then, these pictures start coming out where you can see Stalions on the sideline talking directly to both of Michigan's coordinators. And then there's the video that comes out where, you can see Ohio State audibling at the line of scrimmage, and then Stalions and all the Michigan crew are looking directly at the Ohio State sideline to see the signals coming in, and then they indicate a pass. Although, guess what happened on that play? Ohio State scored a touchdown anyway, even though Michigan was preparing for a pass. So I do think that there's some truth to the side that says, hey, we can know the plays, but we still got to stop it. I think that's pretty much exactly what Deion Sanders said in his press conference, because football is a little bit different where you might know that they're going to try to run a pass to the left, but still, you got to make a play and stop it. And with football being such a physical game, that's easier said than done in some instances, where compare that to the Astros cheating scandal, when they knew the pitch that was coming and where it was going. That's way easier, and that creates way more of an advantage for the hitter than I think sign stealing does in football. So as I'm looking at this whole thing, obviously I don't like Michigan. I find it pretty hilarious that they're dealing with this again. And now, as each day passes, it seems like more and more information is coming out. Now, the latest report is that people in the Michigan athletic department were paying for Stalions to take these visits and paying for his airfare, his hotels, the tickets themselves, all this stuff, which means that the roots of this probably run pretty deep. And now I think Michigan could be in serious trouble because, look, when I first heard it, I rolled my eyes. I was like, man, the NCAA just won't get off Harbaugh's back. They have clearly targeted him, and they're going to stop at nothing or to punish him or just make his life miserable during this year. I don't know if the NCAA is going to be able to operate fast enough to enforce a penalty during the season and prevent Michigan from going to the college football playoff. The NCAA moves at a snail's pace. But something that I really had not considered until Matt Fortuna's article recently, and I would encourage all of you to check that out. Matt Fortuna, big friend of the program here. He referenced Tony Petitti's role in all of this, who's the new Big Ten commissioner, and how he could step in and come down with a hammer on Michigan because this is his first few months on the job as the Big Ten commish. This is his first real scandal he's had to deal with. He was with Major League Baseball when Manfred was dealing with the whole Astros cheating scandal. So maybe Petitti will take a page or will learn a thing from what Manfred did with the Astros and how people thought what the actions that Manfred took with them was really light, and Petitti might be like, all right, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to come down hard on Michigan. I don't think that's going to happen because Michigan has a great chance to win the national championship this season. I don't think the Big Ten is going to get in the way of their own team, but I don't know. I really don't know what they're going to do here. So if I were a Michigan fan, I would be really, really nervous because this should be like the season of their dreams, but it's not because they can't get out of these scandals. And I do find it absolutely hilarious that it's happening to Michigan, a program who tries to act like they do everything the right way. They do things differently. You know, Michigan men, they have a code and all this stuff. And meanwhile, it comes out that they might be the most blatant cheaters in all of college football. I'll be honest. I'm pretty happy it's not happening to Notre Dame because if there were two teams that the college football world would enjoy this the most, if it were to happen to either one of them, it's Notre Dame and Michigan because both schools certainly like to portray that they do things differently. They have a different set of ideals, and I think Notre Dame and Michigan are still different, but you see my point here. They both try to play the moral high ground a little bit, and fortunately, Notre Dame hasn't been caught doing anything like this, and it's Michigan instead. So we can all sit back and enjoy and watch Michigan in their undefeated season just have this black cloud over it that never seems to go away. All right, next question. Rob Clark, did Notre Dame break USC? I think they did, honestly. USC is in complete disarray. And after Notre Dame beat USC, it was like, okay, clearly this team is not that great. They probably won't win the Pac-12 or anything like that, certainly not make the college football playoff because Notre Dame exposed them. Not just, like we all knew the defense for USC was bad, but I don't think anyone realized just how dysfunctional the offense could be, and Notre Dame shut them down. But I thought that USC would be able to bounce back and play well against Utah, maybe have a chip on their shoulder, try to get some revenge for what happened last year. And then Bryson Barnes, the pig farmer, quarterback for Utah, just shredded that USC defense. They go on to win on a last-second field goal to win 34-32. And then the ISO shots of Caleb Williams being upset on the sideline, man, that was really good production work there by the team at Fox. So good job to my colleagues there. That was I certainly enjoyed that. But there are real issues at USC right now, and I'm around it a lot. I interact with a lot of USC fans in my day-to-day life, and they are not happy. They are down in the dumps, not only because this season, one in which they thought they could potentially play for the national championship, has gone completely sideways, and all of their preseason expectations have been shattered. The future doesn't really look that bright either because Caleb Williams is going to go to the NFL draft after this year, and now there's conversations about Lincoln Riley potentially bolting for the NFL. And if you've been listening to this podcast since day one, I've been on this really since last year. I said last year that I think Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams were going to go to the NFL as a package deal because I knew that Lincoln had his eyes in the NFL, and he had mentioned before this year that he only wanted to be coaching till he was 50. And I was like, he just seems like an NFL guy. Like when he was at Oklahoma and there was all those rumors about NFL interest, those were real. Obviously, he was looking elsewhere because he ended up going to USC. And I don't think things have worked out for Lincoln as well as he thought they would when he took the job. He said that USC was going to become the mecca of college football. He thought he'd be able to put up a wall around California and make sure that every big-time high school recruit in the state would stay home. That was the case when Pete Carroll had USC at the top of college football. That is not the case right now. USC does not even have a top 15 recruiting class. And yeah, they can get guys in the transfer portal. They have NIL money to spend, but they're not the only team that's like that these days. Hell, Colorado, who is not that far from them geographically, they're going to get a lot of guys in the transfer portal, a lot of guys that might have been top candidates to go to USC as well. So that's becoming harder on them. And I just feel like Lincoln Riley, the lifestyle of being a college coach might not be suited for him that much longer. He even said in a LA Times article recently that he envies the lifestyle of an NFL coach because their offseason is a lot easier, and the rules and everything is pretty black and white. They don't have to deal with recruiting, the transfer portal, NIL, and all that. It's very regulated. So he's made public comments about how their lifestyle in the NFL is easier, and he's made a point that having a good life and some sort of a work-life balance is important to him, and that's why he's going to retire at 50. So if Lincoln Riley does end up going to the NFL along with Caleb Williams, and then USC goes back to where they were before Lincoln, that would be pretty sweet as a Notre Dame fan, especially knowing that it all really started to go downhill once Notre Dame smacked them in Notre Dame Stadium. I love to see it. Okay, we got a couple more questions left, including, is there any chance Aoudre Esme comes back to Notre Dame next year? That's coming up. This episode of Locked On Irish is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a skill-based, real-money daily fantasy sports game where you pick 2 to 6 players, and if they will do more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. PrizePicks adds a ton of excitement to the sports viewing experience, and you can watch your progress update in real time, win up to 25 times your entry amount, and cash out your winnings with quick scoring, settling, and withdrawals. I've been playing PrizePicks recently. I have no idea why I waited so long, and what I love most about it is that you aren't competing against other people, right? It's just you versus the projections available instead of battling thousands of players, including professionals and sharks. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege, code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, this next question comes from Willie McBride. Is there any chance that Aoudre Esme comes back to Notre Dame next year? I hate to break it to Willie, but no. There is not any chance that Aoudre Esme comes back to Notre Dame next year, nor should he. Because when you're a running back, your value, we all know the conversations about running backs right now, they are not valued that highly in the NFL, although they do have some value. The ones who have the most value are young, pretty cheap players who have not taken that many hits so far in their career, at least in their NFL career. So if Aoudre Esme comes back and he plays another year, his value is going to decrease. Look at Blake Corum, for example, right? He's the starting running back at Michigan. He had an opportunity to head to the NFL draft after last season. His stock was really high, although he did suffer that injury late in the season that prevented him from playing in the Ohio State game and the playoff. He comes back this season, and he really hasn't played all that well. Now, part of that is because they also have Donovan Edwards to share the ball with, and he's another really talented player. But his stock has declined since he came back for his senior season. Aoudre Esme, it could happen because Notre Dame has some really talented running backs behind him. I don't think Aoudre Esme's stock could get any higher than it is right now. So I think he has a strong finish to the season. He goes to the NFL, he makes some money, and I think he could have a decent career at the next level. Now, if we want to branch this out a little bit more and look at other Notre Dame players who have a decision to make after the season, here's who I think is definitely gone. All right, this is like a no-brainer. They're not going to be around next year. Joe Alt, Aoudre Esme, Cam Hart. He does actually have one more year left, the COVID year, but he's gone. Howard Cross, Riley Mills, and J.D. Bertrand. I don't really think there's that many arguments for any of those guys to say. Now, here are some guys who I think should stay and have a decision to make. Blake Fisher, Xavier Watts, Mitchell Evans, Chris Tyree, Nana Asafo-Mensah, and Jordan Botelho. Blake Fisher, out of all these guys, he probably has the best shot at getting drafted in, a semi-decent round, but he still has so much to learn, and he needs to put some He needs to get some better tape because this year it has not been great for Blake Fisher. But he still has so much talent, and I think his ceiling is so high. I'm not out on him as a player. I just think like if he comes back to Notre Dame for one more, hell, maybe even 2 more years, he could eventually play his way into being a first, second-round draft pick. But that is not the case right now. Xavier Watts, this is certainly recency bias after his game against USC. I don't think he's physically ready for the NFL. Plus, he hasn't been playing safety that long, and I think he has a lot more to learn at the college level. He could definitely benefit from coming back another year. Mitchell Evans, I can't even believe we're having this discussion, but the way he's played this season, he's certainly played himself into the conversation, although I still think that one season of being a productive pass catcher is not enough for him to be a top NFL prospect, where if he comes back next season, he could be one of the best tight ends in college football, maybe even win the Mackey Award, and then we're talking about him being, first, maybe second-round pick. Chris Tyree, this one seems like a no-brainer for him to come back. He's only played wide receiver for one season, and he's improved a lot. So if he comes back next season and continues that trajectory, he could be a really good slot receiver at the next level, but he still has a lot more to learn, and I think he could do that at the college level. And another thing with all these guys is they're all making money now, especially at Notre Dame. Guys like Chris Tyree, some starters. So there's certainly a financial incentive to come back and play at Notre Dame where you'll be on the team and you'll be making money. Whereas if you go to the NFL, you might not even make a roster. So something to consider. A couple other guys, Nana Osafa-Mensah. He would be in his 6th year if he decides to return. I think he will. Jordan Botelho. This one is kind of tricky. If it would not shock me if Jordan Botelho decided to transfer, maybe get a fresh start somewhere else, but I think he's going to end up coming back, and he'll be useful on the line next season. I just don't know if he's going to be getting as many reps as he is this season because I feel really good about the future for Bubakar Traore and Josh Burnham, and they both play Vipers. So maybe it makes sense for Botelho to leave, but if he decides to come back, I'm sure Notre Dame would be happy to have him. Here's some guys who I think are maybes. I have legitimately no idea what they're going to do. They could leave. It wouldn't shock me one way or another. Zeke Correll at center. He actually has another year of eligibility, although I don't know how much more he can do to improve his draft stock. I don't think he has the frame to really shoot up draft boards or anything like that, and I think Notre Dame could definitely use his experience next season. Jack Kaiser. He could come back. He could also transfer and get 60 snaps a game wherever he decides to go. But he's also been playing college football for a long time. I don't know if he wants to do that anymore. Same with Maris Leofau. He's obviously played a lot more on Saturdays than Jack Kaiser, and maybe his NFL draft stock is basically capped at this point. He can't really do much more to improve it. So he basically has to decide whether or not he wants to continue playing college football for a 6th year, or if he just wants to try something new, give it a best shot in the NFL and see where it goes. Clarence Lewis. He has another year. No idea. Ramon Henderson, Deion Colsey. These guys, if they decided to just, retire from football, that wouldn't shock me. If they decide to transfer, maybe get another top opportunity elsewhere where they know they're going to start, makes sense to me. Or they could come back to Notre Dame and be a productive reserve player. I don't really know. But there's a lot of guys who are going to make some key decisions here, and obviously we'll have you covered here on the podcast when they do. Okay, last question. This one comes from @JoeBro524. With only 11 opponents for 2024, who would you schedule for next season? I've got bad news for you, Joe Bro. That 12th team is going to be Army. Yep. And they're going to play in Yankee Stadium, and it's going to be the Shamrock Series game. Tim Priester from Irish Illustrated was the first to report that. I have not seen an official announcement yet. Maybe I just completely missed it, but it looks like it's going to be Army. And that schedule next season for Notre Dame is awful. It is terrible. They have Texas A&M, which I guess could be a good game in the season opener in College Station. That just seems odd to me. They have Florida State at home in November, the only good home game. Other than that, it is a gross schedule. So Notre Dame could theoretically take a step back next year in talent and end up finishing 11-1. I really don't know what to expect. But I'll answer your question here because I really wish it wasn't Army, and I really wish it was Ohio State. Just given the way that this last game against Ohio State ended, Notre Dame was so close to beating them. I just want another shot at them so bad, and I don't know when we're going to get it again. Maybe they could play it at a neutral field or something. I don't know. I just wish we could make it happen because I really hate Ohio State, and I want Notre Dame to beat them so bad. And I just don't want to be thinking as much about the last time they played because I still do almost every day. It's like I have a brief, fleeting moment of happiness, and then I'm like, oh, yeah, Notre Dame lost to Ohio State in the last play of the game because they had 10 men on the field. That sucks. But unfortunately, we're going to have to end the show on a sour note today because that is a wrap for this episode, and that's another week of Locked On Irish in the books. thanks again for making this your first listen of the day. I hope you guys enjoy the game tomorrow. I'm hoping that it's a stress-free game. There's plenty of good stuff to talk about on Sunday, but you know how these games go whenever Pitt comes to town. They play a gross brand of football, and that usually leads to an ugly one, but we will have to see. Make sure that you are subscribed to the show on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast. You can also give the show a follow on Twitter at Lockdown Irish, on Instagram at Lockdown Irish Pod, and my personal Twitter account at Tyler, WOJCIAK. I'll talk to you guys on Monday. Go Irish.